Love triangles, rampant drug use, and health issues abound. Bruce Lee's death was strange enough, but it was nothing compared to what came out after. In the early 1970s, many people were champing at the bit for a showdown between Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali. The fact that the two athletes were trained in totally different disciplines wasn't an issue for most fans, who seemed sure that it would be a bout for the ages. For his part, Lee admired Ali. He even studied tapes of the boxer's 1966 match against Cleveland Williams to get inspiration for the climactic fight scene in The Way of the Dragon. Robert Klaus, director of Way of the Dragon sequel Enter the Dragon, later revealed that Lee had taken fans' hopes of a fight more seriously than anyone could have imagined. He quotes Lee as saying, "Everybody says I must fight Ali someday. I'm studying every move he makes. I'm getting to know how he thinks and moves." But while Lee was proud of his athleticism, he was not delusional. He understood the reality of what would happen if he, a 5'7" 145-pound man, fought the 6'3" 210-pound boxer. Again, Klaus quotes Lee, "Look at my hand. That's a little Chinese hand. He'd kill me." Bruce Lee married his wife Linda on August 17, 1964. Having a wife and daughter at home didn't stop Lee from his Lothario ways, however. He didn't even wear a wedding ring while he was married. Lee had a steady stream of girlfriends up until he died. Fellow actor Thordis Brandt only found out Lee had a family after months of dating. Another actor, Nora Meow, later admitted that the two had an affair when they were working together. While the wider world might not have known that Lee was a womanizer until long after he died, many of those around him were already well aware. Betty Ting Pei, for example, says that she was always with him in Hong Kong, and that everyone on set there knew that they were dating. Although Pei was single while she was seeing Lee, many of his other mistresses were not. Thordis Brandt had been in a relationship with her future husband, actor James Arness, for years. Yet another girlfriend, Sharon Farrell, later moved on with Lee's good friend Steve McQueen, prompting Lee to show up on set one day and try to win her back.
That son of a gun got the toughness in him.
Yeah.
Even though she refused, he tried again a couple years later, giving her his number when they ran into each other shortly before his death. Bruce Lee's friends remember him as a man who loved to party. He also had a reputation for using recreational drugs. His drug of choice was weed, although he later moved on to hash. On one occasion, Lee showed up at a friend's house with joints the size of cigars and passed them out to everyone there. Another friend remembers Lee eating hash brownies at the end of a workout. He also used harder narcotics, including cocaine and LSD, and often drank to excess. One friend claimed that he would drink up to 20 bottles of sake a night. Publicly, however, he claimed martial arts was a better and more natural high than anything drugs could provide. Aside from the tales told by friends and associates, proof of Lee's drug use turned up in an unexpected place. Around 2020, someone discovered a cache of letters written by Lee at a flea market. Many of the letters were written to the actor Robert Baker, who, based on their correspondence, seemed to be Lee's dealer. Notably, Lee appears to have wanted to quit using drugs at one point. In one letter, he wrote, "I told Linda to call you to forget about the stuff because I really don't need them in my training. I feel that I've gained in trying them, but the excessive indulgence of them just isn't in my road in Jeet Kune Do."
Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
There seems to be a general agreement among experts that some of Lee's most powerful quotes, sayings, and philosophies were lifted or heavily inspired by other sources. One academic, Dr. James Bishop, studied Lee's writings and concluded, "Make no mistake, Bruce Lee was a plagiarist. I take no satisfaction from saying that, but it is nonetheless true." Matthew Polly, the author of the definitive biography on Lee, told Kung Fu Tea, "I believe that while Bruce borrowed language and imagery, he was genuinely trying to describe a similar spiritual epiphany, but the issue still bothers me." Lee himself wasn't necessarily to blame for all this, though. During his life, he had kept a notebook in which he wrote down random things that came to mind, including famous quotes by others, but he didn't always attribute them. This was understandable, of course, since it was just a personal journal. But when that journal was published posthumously, many of those quotes became mistakenly attributed to Lee himself. On another occasion, Lee gave an interview in which he quoted one of his character's lines, and the clip would often be cut down in documentaries to leave out the interviewer's question, making it look like Lee was claiming a writer's dialogue as his own philosophy. Perhaps the strangest thing to come out about Bruce Lee after he died was an admission by Roman Polanski. The since-disgraced director had been introduced to Lee through his wife, Sharon Tate, after which Polanski became one of Lee's students in the ways of Jeet Kune Do. Then, in August 1969, Tate and 4 others were murdered in her home by members of the Manson family.
Anything is possible. We have no solid information which will limit us to a single suspect.
For 3 months, the investigation dragged on, and Polanski became desperate for leads. Along the way, he had seemingly convinced himself that Tate must have been killed by someone they knew. Not only was Lee a friend, but he also lived only a few miles away from Polanski and Tate. Then, during a Jeet Kune Do lesson that took place after the murders, a passing comment made Polanski think Lee could be the killer. The actor mentioned he had lost his glasses, and Polanski knew that one of the pieces of evidence left at the scene was a pair of glasses. glasses. Plus, as Lee biographer Matthew Polly explained to Esquire, Bruce was the only person Polanski knew personally who had the physical skills to hurt a bunch of people at once. Bruce was the toughest guy he knew, and Bruce knew weapons. Polanski offered to buy Lee new glasses, and they went together to order a pair. It was only when Polanski realized that Lee used a different prescription to the glasses found at the scene that he crossed him off the list of suspects. He never told Lee that he had thought he might be a killer. Lee knew how good his physique looked on film, and he took extreme steps to keep that look. According to his wife, before he died, Lee was living on what was essentially a liquid diet, with his food intake almost completely limited to carrots and apple juice. This obviously wasn't healthy and could have done some serious damage in the long term, but there is a theory that it had a far worse and more immediate effect. Lee died due to swelling in his brain, but the big mystery around his death has always been what caused such a severe reaction in someone so young and healthy. Officially, Lee died of an allergic reaction to medicine he'd taken for a headache. One contrasting theory, however, suggests that his excessive intake of water and other liquids ended up killing him. Not only was he living on a liquid diet, but Lee was living in a very hot and humid environment in Hong Kong. Excessive consumption of liquids could have damaged his kidneys, which meant too much water stayed in his body, leading to brain swelling. Game of Death producer Raymond Chow was with Lee when he died. He remembers the actor becoming overheated before drinking some water. Chow says Lee got dizzy after this, went to lie down, and died. Bruce Lee felt an obsessive desire to succeed in Hollywood. As a result, he pushed himself too hard in his final years. His wife, Linda, told biographer Matthew Polly about the punishing pace Bruce was keeping in the period before he died. She said, "I tried to talk him into easing up, but he would cut me short by saying, the biggest detriment to relaxation is to say, I must relax." By this stage, he had convinced himself that he was relaxing when he was working.
Water is the softest substance in the world, but yet it can penetrate the hardest rock.
Over the course of 2 years, Bruce's weight dropped from about 140 pounds to around 120. The problem was he wasn't losing fat. As you can see in his earlier films, there was no fat on him even at 140 pounds. Instead, his body was losing muscle mass, which is much less healthy and could be a sign of something more serious. Friends who saw him during this time remember him being constantly tired, with dilated eyes and a gray color to his skin. Lee himself admitted that he was working too much and that it was affecting his health, but he didn't appear to do anything about it. While many people are aware of the mystery surrounding Lee's death, not everyone knows that he had almost died just 2 months earlier, and possibly in the exact same way. Since he survived that first brush with death, we know what went wrong the first time. Lee had suffered heat stroke. This led biographer Matthew Polly to conclude that Lee's eventual death was caused by heat stroke too. The first incident took place on May 10, 1973. It was a particularly warm day in the hot and humid city of Hong Kong. Lee was in a sound booth dubbing lines for one of his films, and while the room had air conditioning, it had to be turned off so as to not ruin the noise on the takes. This meant that Lee was being kept in a small, hot, stuffy, humid room while working for an extended period of time. Complicating matters was the fact that just weeks before, Lee had undergone an operation to have his armpit sweat glands removed. While this might have meant he looked better on film, it wasn't exactly helpful when his body was overheating. Lee soon began to feel unwell and escaped to a bathroom, where he fainted. He was discovered by a stagehand, fainted again, went into convulsions, and started to have difficulty breathing. Fortunately, on this occasion, he was rushed to the hospital immediately and treated in time, albeit barely, having been unconscious for over 2 hours. Lee later told his wife that he had been able to feel how close to death he'd come. Bruce Lee was dealing with business in Hong Kong on the day he died. In the middle of the day, Lee went to the house of his girlfriend, Betty Ting Pei. After that, we only have the accounts of Pei and producer Raymond Chow as to what happened, but it seems Lee felt unwell, took one of Pei's headache pills, laid down to rest, and died. When Lee's death was announced to the public, however, the story was changed to make it less scandalous. Instead of being with his mistress, Lee's friend, Zhou Wenhui, claimed that the actor had been with his wife Linda at their own home. Pei claims not to know why Zhou lied and says she was not told about the decision to try and cover up their relationship. Of course, the truth was quickly revealed, and while the denials over their affair continued for decades, Pei eventually admitted that she and Lee were in a relationship. Pei says that her life was later ruined by accusations that she'd had something to do with Lee's death. This led her to give up her acting career at just 38 years old. As she told the Sunday Morning Post, "He died next to me. I was only 26, a young woman. Do you think I wasn't scared? No one would help me. I felt everyone wanted me to die." If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.